Welcome in. Happy Friday morning. It's great to be starting off the day, as always, with you on KCMO Talk Radio. Well, congratulations to the Royals sweeping the Mets. I was out at the game yesterday. Gosh, the Mets are just a sad sack of baseball players is what they are. And the Royals got a little juice going right now. 6 in a row, couple of sweeps. Life is good, John.
It's kind of like the manager's been playing with a Rubik's Cube all season. Now we found a good combo here. We've got one whole face completed, I think.
I agree. I mean,
right?
And here's the thing. As I'm at the game yesterday with Claire, I took her. We had a great time, stayed for the whole game. I'm watching just these two teams. And I'm saying, if I'm looking at the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I'd rather have the talent the Royals have right now than the Mets. Like, I don't know what the Mets have. I'm watching the Royals, and I'm like, there are some pieces here that you can like. They've got some speed, some talent. I like the Garcia kid. I like him a lot. Top of the lineup. He's a player.
That's been a plus, too, along with guys like Michael Massey. I liked him at the end of the year. They're lunch bucket guys, and they're not necessarily the big star. But, man, he made a nice dive and flip on the double play this week. Where I'm going, that's the kind of guy you need who gets down, gets dirty. He was like a Joe Randa kind of player we had in the past. So, in addition to Bobby Witt Jr., who can't do it all himself, P.S., by the way, right? And so finally, Drew Waters has been healthy and kicking in, and then you mentioned Garcia.
Waters and Witt hit home runs yesterday, so it was cool to see all that. It was great to be out at the ballpark. And one thing I noticed yesterday, and maybe I just missed it because I wasn't like there actively looking for beer, but when you're taking a 4-year-old, it's not about the beer, all right? It's not going to Arrowhead, okay, with a buddy. I did not see any Bud Light. Now, I don't know if the K has a different deal from Arrowhead, which obviously is a Bud Light operation. I didn't see any Bud Light out at the stadium. I don't know if that's new. I haven't been to enough games this year to know if there was Bud Light there back in April. There's not Bud Light right now. But I just noticed walking around, I'm like, gosh, I'm not seeing any Bud Light anywhere. I'm seeing the Coors Lights, the Miller Lights, the Boulevards, but I didn't see Bud Light anywhere in the stadium. I didn't see it on tap. I didn't see any cans. I just didn't see any Bud Light.
I think they're a Miller Lite park.
Oh, they're a Miller Lite park.
I do think
But
so.
Here's the thing. Arrowhead's a Bud Light park, but you can still buy Coors Light and all the other beers.
Okay.
They're just not going to walk around with the guys that beer here, beer. They're not going to do that with the brand of beer that they aren't. So if you're at Arrowhead and you want to get Coors Light, you've got to get out of your seat and go to the refrigerator. Whereas at the K yesterday, I didn't see it available anywhere. I didn't see cans of it. I didn't see guys walking around with it. So I don't have the answer there. But I bring this up because Bud Light and its sales continue to go in the toilet. And finally, industry executives are starting to talk about it. Fox Business had this story yesterday. Bud Light's issues connecting with Middle America could have been avoided, beer industry guru says. And this is from Beer Business Daily's Harry Schumacher. He told Fox News Digital about the Bud Light debacle. In my 30 years of doing this, I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen such a shift in market share this quickly and never seen it so prolonged. And I think it's kind of a wake-up call for marketers in all consumer packaged goods that wading into culture wars can have pretty serious consequences. Well, no kidding. Wow, thanks so much.
Talk about a bombshell.
A way to go there. But then this is where it gets interesting in terms of how Bud Light got to this and something that, I've said for the last 3 months should be studied by all marketing students at every college in America for the next 40 years. How Bud Light destroyed its own brand, going from the number one beer maker and beer consumer, or beer that gets consumed in this country, to falling 25 to 30% in the span of 3 to 4 months with no end in sight. So back in 2015, I didn't know this, Anheuser-Busch moved its marketing and advertising teams from St. Louis to 24th Street in New York City. Along the way, Schumacher said it fell into a culture of what he calls checkbox marketing, where coastal elites in trendy Manhattan, New York neighborhoods make decisions that will look good on LinkedIn as opposed to what will actually help sell beer. And I thought to myself, that is a perfect explanation. You've got people in Manhattan, New York, trying to sell beer to people in Kansas City and doing checkbox marketing to help their own LinkedIn profiles, to help them get their next job, instead of just doing what they should be doing to sell beer to their core consumer and trying to find more of those core consumers. Goes on the note, Anheuser-Busch made a conscious decision back in 2015 to move their sales and marketing functions to New York from St. Louis, where they had been headquartered for 100 years. At the time, distributors warned them that might give them a hole in their thinking. It might give them gaps in connecting with Middle America. And sure enough, that's clearly what happened. And it sure did happen.
Who knew? A hole in New York.
He goes on the note here in this article, I think living in that kind of Manhattan bubble really does remove you from bars and taverns, restaurants and convenience stores, grocery stores across America. And I think it definitely does have a cultural effect that you can't really measure, but it's definitely there. I don't know what they can do now, he says. It's hard to move people back, but I think clearly that might have been a contributing factor, at least to what happened. There's no doubt. There's no doubt that's what happened here. It's indisputable. You had people at the top of the marketing arm and the company in Anheuser-Busch who thought, for whatever reason, you know what we need? Dylan Mulvaney, a guy who is famous for pretending to be a woman, and I use the famous word in air quotes, famous on TikTok, and it blew up in their faces. And now I'm walking around Kauffman Stadium, I'm not seeing any Bud Light. And once again, they may not be a Bud Light ballpark, but like at Arrowhead, you can get every other light beer. You just got to go pay for it. You got to go pick it up. They're not going to be guys walking around handing the beer to you while you sit in your seat. And as I'm at the game yesterday, I'm like, what? None of this, huh? Not a single one. And when you see the numbers and you see that Bud Light distributors, this other headline I was reading yesterday, there was a lot of news about Bud Light. Distributors are saying they're resigned to their painful Bud Light losses, and they've now given up on luring back dissatisfied customers following the Mulvaney fiasco. After 4 months of hiring freezes and layoffs, Anheuser-Busch wholesalers have accepted that they have lost a chunk of their customers for good and need to focus on a new crop of drinkers. I mean, what a colossal failure. And if you're somebody who, as we get ready for the weekend here on a Friday, used to, up until April, go pick up your 6-pack of Bud Light, what did you move to? How much are you officially moved off this beer, and do you ever see yourself coming back? I don't think most are. I don't believe that most who left are coming back because the comparable beers are awfully similar. 913-408-7710 as we get rolling on a Friday morning here on KCMO Talk Radio. I got a fun 4 hours planned with you. Tony's Kansas City, Tony Bateo is going to be here in studio after 9 o'clock. So it's a ways away, but do not miss that as we get the morning rolling. Now, speaking of the Royals, Mayor Lucas was on the show yesterday, and we made some news on this show. It got picked up by other media outlets. He is none too pleased with the way these negotiations are going as the Royals decide between the East Village and North KC. He was fired up yesterday. We'll play the clip next. Well, it was, for a long time, America's number one beer. It no longer is. Bud Light saying yesterday, not Bud Light, but the parent company InBev, saying yesterday U.S. revenue fell 10% in the second quarter. Now, Bud Light's down like 25-30. So the bulk of the revenue dropping 10% in the second quarter is, of course, led by Bud Light. Sales to U.S. retailers declined 14%. Revenue in North America in the second quarter for InBev, parent company of Bud Light, dropped $395 million. The Dylan Mulvaney mistake was a $400 million mistake for the company. I hope it was worth it. I hope it was worth it for you, Bud Light. I mean, gosh, that is just a colossal error. $400 million mistakes. Sheesh. Free Market Frank is on KCMO. Hey, Frank, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Pete. Interesting thing has happened in Missouri with, in my business, investment advisory firm. The state of Missouri has now begun to require, as of June 1st, that advisors who use ESG screens have to have a signature from their clients on a disclosure that states that they have been advised of the additional risk or potential poor performance of ESG-focused investing. I don't do that because we use the basic balance sheet, cash flow, cash reserves, profits as our screen for what we invest in. But those who choose to do that have to have a disclosure, and clients who ask for ESG investing have to sign the same disclosure.
Well, that's a good job by Missouri. I remember that they passed that in the legislative session. So good job by them.
It's wonderful. Also, if you'll remember, I think the second week this thing hit, I called in and said, Pete, this brand is dead. Number one. Number two, they could rebrand it as a Wiser Light. There you go.
Wiser Light. All right, hey, they'll take any ideas at this point. I mean, they whatever they can do. At this point, they might as well name it Wiser Light, completely change the look, the color scheme, do it all. I mean, just start from scratch. I don't see how it may come back a bit, but I don't see how it ever becomes America's top beer again. I'm not seeing it. Victor in Parkville, what about you? Good morning.
Good morning, Pete. You know, this is big, but this is just the latest and most visible and most devastating woke event that has happened. If you all remember what happened with Nike, you know, Nike took a big hit with Kaepernick, and, you know, my Nikes relegated to the garden. I went to Adidas and Puma. Then after Coke got woke, and after what they did with the Major League Baseball, I buy Pepsi products. Disney went woke and started going down that road and everything else. Well, you know, I would love to get the Disney Channel, but I won't. And if my kids were young, I wouldn't take them to their movies. So, you know, this affects how and what I buy. And I'm not the only American that this affects. And this, I think, also goes beyond conservative and liberal. I think this is a parent thing. This is people who actually think common sense and everything else. So I think this is a devastating thing for their product, but it hopefully is a wake-up call to Americans that, in business, stay out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Sell your product. That's all we really want.
That's all we're looking for, Victor. Well said. We just want you to sell your product, whether it's Nike shoes, Bud Light beer, anything else, to as many people as possible on the left, on the right, and in the middle. That's it. That's what you're in the business of. Now, the difference, though, is that Nike took a temporary hit. But Nike, no company in the last few years has suffered the way that Bud Light has suffered on such a tremendous scale. And by the way, with everybody watching. Yeah, we talked about Nike. There was some outrage around Nike. And yes, there are people who won't buy Nike again, like Victor and many others. I don't have a lot of Nike. I can't think of anything I have that's Nike. But Nike did not suffer in the way that Bud Light has suffered. It just didn't. And it's unlikely that Nike ever suffers the way that Bud Light has suffered. Bud Light was an easier brand to boycott. It was an easier product to boycott. And it's gotten so much attention that people are not going to forget about it. And the other thing is, people are much more loyal to their beer than they are to the gym shirt that they're going to pick up at Kohl's, right? I mean, that's just hey, is that Nike? I didn't even realize it was Nike. Like, how many times do you go buy, one of those pairs of shorts or shirts or whatever, and you don't even know if it's Adidas, if it's Nike, if it's Reebok, but if you're going to pick up a six-pack on a Friday like today when you get off of work, you know exactly what you're buying, John.
I want to make sure the Bud Light marketing VP gets full credit for her post-interview. So it's not like the marketing campaign happened and people go, hey, what's this? Mm-hmm. You had the VP of marketing going, I meant to do that.
Yes, you did. Right. There is that, what's her name? Schneider.
Heiner
Schneider something. Yeah. Alyssa Heiner Schneider from InBev.
There was a doubling down on that.
Yeah, she came out in a Zoom interview and said, we are trying to appeal Bud Light beyond the base, beyond the frat bro base of what we perceive Bud Light to be. It's like, okay, I understand you want to sell more beer to different people, but you don't do it to spite your core consumer. That doesn't make a lot of sense. That's not a very smart move. And that's exactly what they did in one of the dumbest marketing decisions of all time. Our text line is also 913-408-7710. That's 913-408-7710. Pete, voting with your dollar is more effective than any politician. That's true in large degree. Pete, you're a boycott of Bud Light. Well, it's not my boycott. I never drank Bud Light. All right. I was boycotting Bud Light before it was cool to boycott Bud Light. Let's be clear about this. Your boycott of Bud Light has cost 1,000 American jobs. Well done. Are you proud yet? I didn't cost anybody their job. The marketing morons at Anheuser-Busch cost these jobs. That's what happened. And by the way, when you look at where a lot of the job losses were, I was reading this as well last night, it was mostly in New York. It wasn't on the street. It wasn't at the street level. And this is a quote here I'm reading from the Fox Business article from yesterday. This is from this guy Schumacher that's quoted in this piece, Harry Schumacher of Beer Business Daily. He said, "We've been led to believe," here's the quote, "there was clearly a need for a cultural shift within the company, especially in the sales and marketing departments in New York. We've been led to believe that's where the majority, if not all of the layoffs have occurred. Not at the street level, not in their regional offices, just in New York." That means it's all the marketing, woke, LinkedIn crowd people who, by the way, have found another business to try to wokeify and destroy. They're going to be fine. Those are the people that have been laid off. And by the way, it's never going to be your fault. It's never going to be my fault. It's going to be the fault of the people who made these awful decisions. Next, Mayor Quinton Lucas was on yesterday, and something he said on this show got plenty of local media attention about the future of the Royals. He's not a happy man. We've got it next. Well, I hope Quinton Lucas is having a better morning than he was having yesterday when he came on this show. He was in an okay mood. He's usually pretty affable. But I bring that up because he's clearly not happy with the way this process has played out with the Kansas City Royals. Of course, the Royals are down to moving up north to North KC, or they're going to stay in Kansas City, Missouri proper and go to the East Village. But with each passing day and each passing comment and statement and letter by owner John Sherman, it looks more and more likely like they're going up north to Clay County and North KC. And there's a multitude of reasons for that. But yesterday, the mayor came on the show, as he does each and every Thursday morning, and I asked him, hey, where do things stand between you and the Royals? And, I didn't expect he'd give us much. I figured he'd say, hey, we're talking, we're going through the process, and we're looking forward to seeing, what happens here in the weeks ahead. I don't know, something political. But sometimes you strike a nerve. Sometimes you just let the guy run with it. And that's exactly what happened with the mayor yesterday when I asked him that very simple question, and he was off to the races.
I have talked to the Kansas City Royals. I think the Kansas City Royals are in a position where they need to figure out what they're going to do. And that's, after a certain point, we're all professionals here. I would expect them to actually come to some decision on what they're going to do. The announcement of no decision, it is starting to feel like, I'm trying to, and look, I like a lot of people there. I like John.
Here we go. He's just starting to get ramped up. So the first 20 seconds, he's kind of doing the whole politician thing. Yeah, they're going to decide. But then something right at this moment in the conversation yesterday, something just clicked. And he's like, screw this, I'm pissed. All right?
I'm getting pissed now.
So now the ramp up begins for the mayor in our conversation yesterday about the Royals.
Sherman, don't get me wrong. But, whenever people take forever to decide if they're going to run for president or something, I think Mario Cuomo was this back in 1992. I was very young, but there's this will he or won't he and all of that.
Now we got story time with Mayor Q in the middle here.
That tends to get old to me. And I think in the history and in the annals of American politics, it gets old to many. And you just want people to say, are you going to run or not? Right? It's probably why Governor Clinton found the breach back in 92, ran and all of that. Cuomo was kind of on the outside of it and ended up losing his gubernatorial seat a few years later. I guess right now I'm comparing the Royals to Governor Cuomo. And my thought would be the elder. Mm-hmm. And my thought would be, hey, let's just, what are you going to do? You figure out what you're going to do. You try to figure out how to pay for it yourself as much as possible. Go to whatever government entity you want to have as a partner. And that's how this thing should work. The sort of, we're not sure. Tell us more. Can we have a beauty contest? There are these letters. There are these back and forths between officials on both sides of the river.
This is getting good now.
It's unseemly. It's unseemly. It is bizarre, frankly. It's something the likes of which I have not seen. And I grew up here back when, frankly, if you were in Kansas City in the 90s, Mayor Cleaver and then Mayor Ed Eilert of Overland Park could have some good back and forths on kind of the Johnson County and Kansas City, Missouri thing. But, they were just kind of, I think, a little more professional with it. And I'd like to have that happen here. So I got no new comments on that. I guess they're going to decide in late September unless they send a letter deciding to do it later.
Oh, man. Woo, baby, baby, baby. Oh, my goodness gracious.
Boom, boom, boom. Woo!
Yeah, that's right. I'm listening to that from Mayor Lucas yesterday. I love the end, too, when he goes, after 2 minutes of intense comments, he says, yeah, I've got no new comments on that. It's like, no, that was a pretty damn good 2 minutes of comments, actually. I'll take that every time we talk, Mr. Mayor. He was in a place where I think, and we all get there, whether you're me doing this show or you talking to the boss at work today, whatever it might be, where you're having a conversation and something clicks. And this buildup happens. And you've been fed up for weeks or months. And then all of a sudden you just let it out. And Quentin Lucas is not the kind of guy to get angry. That's not how he fights. That's not his style. He's kind of more of a Floyd Mayweather guy than he is Mike Tyson. Sly James was more of a guy who would just get pissed and would just let it rip. Now, I'm not saying one's better than the other. I'm just saying it's different styles for different politicians. I remember one time Sly got mad at me towards the end of his tenure when I was talking to him about the homicide issue, and he's like, what would you do about it? I'm like, well, I'm not the mayor. But anyway, that's never been Quentin Lucas's style. It's just not who he is. He's affable. He's likable. Even if you disagree, that's just kind of who he is. So yesterday, when he starts the answer talking about the Royals, and then he gets into the middle of it, and he's saying it's unseemly. I've never seen anything like this before. I wish we had more professionalism. I was like, whoa, all right, we're getting somewhere here. He's not happy. He's not happy because I believe he understands, and he now is acquiescing to the fact that the Royals are likely going up north, and that's what I keep hearing from people, that at this point it's probably 60-40 they end up going up north. And maybe he feels like he's, and the city has been used and played and all this. I have not seen that thus far. I have not seen, and no one's really talked about this idea that the Royals are saying to Jackson County and then saying to Clay County, give us your best offer. Who's going to give us the most money? That has not been suggested to me. Now, if that's going on, we'll report it. We'd like to hear it. But that's not what has been suggested to me. But clearly, the mayor does not want to be the guy that oversees one of the staple franchises in this city leaving this city. That's what he doesn't want to see. And that's as much of an ego thing as it is anything else. Because I don't think it's the worst thing for him. Yes, there are people who are going to point the finger and say, ha, 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 you're the mayor, you lost the Royals. But I don't think it's actually the worst thing for him. Once you get over the emotion of the Royals leaving, air quotes, Kansas City, which they're not really, they're leaving, but they're staying in the metro, you realize, hey, this is actually okay for the taxpayer in Jackson County and for Quentin Lucas, the taxpayer in Kansas City. You can spend your sales tax dollars, that 3/8 cent sales tax, on the Chiefs. You can probably shorten the length of it potentially as well, depending on what it is the Chiefs want. And, you get to give them the entire complex. Like, I understand the emotional angle of why you would not want to be the mayor who oversees the loss of the Chiefs. But when the dust settles and you actually analyze it and you take the emotion out of it, it's not a bad thing. If you're the Jackson County or Kansas City, Missouri, or both taxpayer, and you're the mayor of Kansas City. Yes, the decision will be in part by the Royals based on the issues in the county and the issues in the city, public safety likely being near the top of the list. But, man, it's not nearly as bad long-term as some want to make it out to be after the finger-pointing and the ha-ha gets all done. 913-408-7710 as we hit 642 here on KCMO Talk Radio. Say hi to Jim. He's on KCMO. Jim, what's up?
Hey, Pete, I think he just got Quentin cited himself because he was smiling while he was doing the police budget a couple of years ago and then slipped out $40 million. Now you've got, the Royals are looking at you smiling and trying to do negotiations with other people at the same time.
So you're saying that he's annoyed because the Royals are taking a page out of his own book?
Yeah.
Hadn't thought of it that way.
It sure seems like it, though.
Yeah. Well, listen, everyone will do it, right? In politics and business, Jim, as you know. Everyone will do it if it's convenient to them.
It's the way it works.
Yeah. But it is amazing how things have changed over the last 3 months, where when we asked the mayor about this back in April, he was scoffing at the idea of the Royals going up north. But now with each passing day, it does look more and more likely. And as someone who was out there yesterday, I will tell you, and I'll dive into this more next hour, but I was out at the K yesterday, took Claire out to the game to watch the Mets get blown out by the Royals, who are now playing some good baseball. And thinking to myself, gosh, this drive out here to the sports complex is a lot more enjoyable, I will add, whether it's downtown or even North KC. I'm just going to throw that out there. It's a lot easier to get over here than it is to have to, get on 35, deal with downtown, even if you're just passing by. It's a lot easier going out this way, John.
I know we want to pretend like we're Manhattan or something.
Well, you're
Get
right.
some bridge traffic.
I should know better, but you're right. I don't know. I was being selfish yesterday with a 4-year-old in the back seat thinking it doesn't get any easier than hopping on 435 and calling it a day.
Absolutely. People are going to miss it. Everybody's all gung-ho for this. Just remember.
Yeah, just remember.
When you're crawling across the bridge.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Coming up on KCMO as we approach 7 o'clock, don't forget we've got your last chance at the training camp tickets for next Tuesday. That's coming up. But next, I want to get into this for a little bit. Gavin Newsom, Ron DeSantis, debate is now going down. Some people aren't a fan of it. I love it. I want to get your thoughts. We'll do it next. So one guy's not running for president, and the other guy is down like 40 points in the polls. That's Gavin Newsom, the California governor, and Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor. However, the two guys are now set to debate later this year after Ron DeSantis accepted Gavin Newsom's challenge to a debate on Sean Hannity a couple of nights ago.
You heard Gavin make the offer. Your answer is?
Absolutely. I'm game. Let's get it done. Just tell me when and where. We'll do it. And here's the thing, Sean. I mean, in one respect, the debate between California and Florida, has already been had, as you suggest. People have been voting on that. They've been voting on it with their feet. They have fled California in record numbers. Florida has been the #1 state for net in-migration. We have the #1 ranked economy, #1 now in education, crime rate at a 50-year low. But in another sense, this is the debate for the future of our country, because you have people like Joe Biden. They would love to see the Californication of the United States. Biden may not even be the nominee. You could have Gavin Newsom. You could have Kamala Harris. And I think if we go down that direction, that's going to accelerate American decline. We can't see America decline anymore. We need to reverse.
A lot of people have asked me, they said, hey, and I was surprised that there are a lot of people who aren't fans of this yesterday in the wake of the announcement. And I didn't think it was all that controversial. And I certainly think it's a great idea for everybody, but most importantly for you and I. I think it's most important for us to get this debate between Ron DeSantis and Gavin Newsom. Not because either guy's likely to be president in 2024, but we have such a lack of substantive debate driven by policy in this country. And we haven't had it for almost 10 years. You know, it used to be media, mainstream media panels would have some Republicans, some Democrats. They'd go back and forth. Heck, there was Hannity and Colmes. Meet the Press used to have on solid Republicans. Now, when you look at TV shows in this country, there might be one person on the other side of the aisle, like The Five, Fox's show The Five, where there's always like one Democrat on there, or The View, where there's one Republican, but they're really just there to be a punching bag to then have the base get all riled up for both shows. It's TV. It's not really meant to be solid policy debates because, frankly, they're not the sharpest tools in the shed that are on a lot of these shows. And then, yeah, they might have a Republican on Meet the Press once in a while, but it's always someone who's going to be like an anti-Trumper or a never-Trumper or something like that. It's always going to be someone who's kind of squishy about things, who's not overly offensive. I use that word in air quotes, but you know what I'm talking about. They might pop one on there once in a while, but that's it. You don't get what even you got on Bill O'Reilly's show when he was on Fox News, where you would have Democrats come on the show and defend their stance. And they respected Bill enough to come on his show. They knew he had a massive audience. That doesn't happen. I mean, it happened once in a while under Tucker Carlson. Once. Rarely did it happen. But once in a while, Tucker Carlson could get on some Democrat or somebody that he didn't see perfectly eye to eye with to join his show and, debate. But those days are over. It doesn't happen in American media anymore. It's one of the reasons that I like having Quentin Lucas on this show. And, the numbers suggest we're doing the right thing. But a lot of you always say, I don't want to hear from him. No, I think we should all want to hear from people that we disagree with. We should not want to sit in our bubbles all day, every day. And we should want to have real, serious debates on the issues. And that's what this debate, which is likely to happen in November between Gavin Newsom and Ron DeSantis, is going to be. It's going to be legitimate, serious debate because media's let us down. But also, let's be just completely honest here. The last couple of presidential cycles have not been policy heavy. They've been more personality heavy. It's not a knock. It got Donald Trump elected. But go back to 2016. Tell me what you remember. What stands out to you from 2016? I'll give you a second. You know what stands out to me? Two things. Lock her up. Lock her up. And then build the wall. Build the wall. Lock her up and build the wall. That's what I remember from 2016. And then 2020 was such a disaster. It was overrun by COVID and, two guys who frankly made it more personal and aren't the deepest thinkers to begin with. So you haven't really had, in going on what feels like nearly 10 years, real, deep, substantive debate on incredibly important policy issues that this country's facing. Overseas, culturally, economically. What are we doing about $32 trillion in debt? Give me a Gavin Newsom take. Give me a Ron DeSantis take. It will be a chance for Americans to actually sit down, if they're actually going to watch it, which is debatable, and say, what do I want for the future of America? Do I want the Californication of America, or do I want Florida's version of America? And having Florida's version doesn't mean you have to vote for Ron DeSantis. I mean, Trump will do a lot of the things that DeSantis would do, I'm sure, on the policy side. It's just which one is a better vision for the future of the country, California or Florida? And the American people, if they choose to consume the content, will get that coming up in November when Ron DeSantis and Gavin Newsom debate. And I think the American people, I think we desperately need this. We need to see these conversations and these real debates happening. Because if not, we just get caught up in the nonsense and our own bubble and the personality-driven stuff of the day. And the country's at the point where it's got to be about more. And you have two states, one dark blue, one that has become now pretty darn red in Florida, that have handled things very differently. And create two different visions for this country. And which one do you want? So I love the fact that Ron DeSantis and Gavin Newsom are going to be getting on stage. And frankly, for DeSantis, it's good for him because it allows him to show his stuff beyond just being on a GOP stage where you're going to speak for 2 minutes at a time and maybe you speak once every 20 minutes. And then it's good for Newsom as well. You know, just in case Joe does have a trip and fall situation, he's kind of setting himself up to be the next guy up. Because we know it can't be Kamala. Sorry. 913-408-7710. I don't know if you're as excited for this as I am, but I'm really fired up. 913-408-7710. Coming up, we'll also get the tickets to training camp for next week. Last chance at those as we hit the 7 o'clock hour. Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio, 710 AM, 103.7 FM, and stream us on the all-new KCMO Talk Radio app. Well, don't let the bastards grind you down in Jackson County. That's for darn sure. Hard to do, but I know you're trying if you're going through the appeals process on your assessments. Good morning. Happy Friday. It's great to be here wrapping up the week on KCMO Talk Radio. So this is good. Gail McCann-Beatty, who is the tax assessment director, is in full-blown defense mode. That's what she's doing in the wake of what has been 54,539 of you appealing your property assessments in Jackson County. That's about 20% of all the properties in Jackson County who have appealed the assessments during the month of July. Of course, the deadline came and went on Monday, but 20% of you in Jackson County, 54,539. How long is it going to take Jackson County? I mean, are we going to be at the 2025 assessments by the time they're done wrapping up the 2023 appeals? The government does nothing fast. Never mind when you're trying to cobble back some of your own money. You know the process is always slow, John.
Yeah, can you imagine? It'll be like Baskin-Robbins.
Now serving 355.
Oh, geez. Or like the DMV. Mm-hmm. You know, you just sit there for hours and hours and wait for your number to be called. Oh, my goodness. Mm-hmm. Sounds horrible. And I know some of you have already gone through the process, by the way. But Gail McCann-Beatty did a press conference yesterday. And here's part of what she had to say.
This is not a perfect system, and we understand that.
Oh, really? Oh,
such a cute soundbite.
You don't say. It's not a perfect system. Yeah, I would say that's a really nice political way to put it. It's not a perfect system. Okay.
And that's why we have an appeals process.
Jackson County Assessor Gail McCann-Beatty says the property value increases are largely justified.
I think we are closer to having most of our properties at market value than we've ever been.
Okay. Did you put the crickets in there on purpose at the end, Mark? Or is that just, okay, that was just KCTV5. We'll give KCTV5 all the credit. Well done by Angie Rincono at KCTV5 then, if that just conveniently worked its way in, as Gail McCann-Beatty says, yeah, we're basically up to the properly assessed values of everybody in Jackson County. Okay, so we're kind of in this middle ground territory, where the appeals process is over. The deadline has come and gone. It ended on Monday, the 31st of July. But now, and I'm not going to lose, and I hope that nobody does in media, lose track of this story. Because you, the taxpayer in Jackson County, deserve to be defended here. If there's anything that local media can be useful for right now, it's keeping these hucksters involved in this process accountable, these bureaucrats accountable to you, the people. This is amazing when you really think about it. Let's put this process together. The county's going around in a process that has been incredibly flawed out of the gates telling you that your property value is oftentimes worth far more than it is. And then the onus is on you, the citizen, to convince the bureaucrat who you pay, who you fund, that they got it wrong. The onus is on you. It's not on them to defend their number. The onus is on you to tell them that the number that they have out is wrong. How screwed up is this? And I know that it's true. This is always how it goes, anywhere when it comes to assessment of property. But because of how poorly Jackson County has handled this, and because of how completely out of line and the horror stories that are out there, you got people with 100 to 500% increases on their assessments for no rhyme or reason. The onus is on you, not on them to prove their number. The onus is on you to defend why their number is wrong when they're only employed because of your tax dollars. So you got to give credit where it's due. Mayor Lucas has been pushing back on Jackson County. Now, part of this is politics. Despite Mayor Lucas saying yesterday that he was at a luncheon with Frank White the other day and they sat next to each other, which I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for that. The two guys don't like each other. I don't care what either of them say. There's no love lost there. I know that to be a fact. They're not fans of each other. The county executive and, of course, the mayor of Kansas City. So Quentin Lucas is using this assessment debacle to tweak the county. And yes, he's standing up for the taxpayer, but he's also doing it to tweak the county in part. And this was part of the KCTV5 report yesterday where Mayor Lucas, if you missed it a couple of days ago, he came out and he was like, hey, these assessments are hurting regular people and something's got to be done.
We do not want thousands more properties being abandoned in Kansas City and in Jackson County. And so this isn't actually just a moment of crisis for now. I think the monetary crisis is a real one. But what happens if you have more people that are saying, I'm just not going to pay?
Fair question. What's going to happen then? Well, here's what Gail McCann Beatty, the Jackson County tax assessor, had to say to KCTV5.
I noticed you used the word crisis. Do you think this is a crisis?
I do think this is a crisis.
It's unfortunate that the mayor stood in front of a camera and made a comment without ever having a conversation with me.
You want to have a conversation with him?
The mayor knows my phone number.
Oh, snap! We got one of those. The mayor knows my phone number. Man, oh, man.
Show some RESPICT.
I mean, I'm Team Mayor Q on this one. Whether he's doing it for the right reasons or not, or maybe it's a little bit of both, I don't really care. But totally Team Q when it comes down to Gail McCann Beatty and Frank White versus Mayor Lucas on the assessments. It's not sustainable. And now, how many of you in Jackson County are sitting here in limbo? You're just waiting and waiting and waiting to see how bad the county could screw you. And don't let the county get off on this. Well, we don't actually set the property taxes. That's on the cities. That's on the school boards. Yes, but if the assessment is so out of line and so jacked up and not in line with what the property is actually worth, that's still going to impact your property taxes. So do not, if any county official says to you, well, we don't actually set, property tax numbers, we don't set mill levies, fine. But if my assessment is so out of line and not in line with what it should be, it's going to impact me. 913-408-7710. Scott's in Kansas City. Hey, Scott, good morning.
Hey, morning, Pete. Love your show. I think everybody needs to remember 2 years ago when Gail McCann Beatty was on the record as saying that everybody needs to pay their fair share. She was adamant about that. Mm-hmm. And I have a lawyer who he had to fight his property taxes for his commercial building. It was outrageous. But and one last note on your mayor conversation yesterday. I disagree a little bit with the mayor in the fact that he said that they need more tools over at the prosecutor's office. I think they have too many there right now.
Yeah.
The only good thing, one's going to be retiring in a year.
They can't come soon enough there, Scott. Well done. Happy Friday, man. That's great.
You too, man.
Oh, that's outstanding. Can we get a Gene Peters Baker countdown clock in the studio? Maybe we can have it sponsored by, the Kansas City Fraternal Order of Police. What do you think of that? Fraternal Order of Police, whatever they are, Lodge 99, sponsors the Gene Peters Baker Countdown Clock. I think we had one for Rex Archer.
Thanksgiving.
Oh, boy.
I love Thanksgiving.
I think we had one for the former KCMO health director. I think that was brought to you by Subway. But can we get one for Gene, John? What do you think?
In my day, it was kind of an art project. We'd go to school and glue strips into a circle and link them, and then you would tear one off for each day that got closer to Christmas. We were kids, so yeah. Maybe blue and gold or something. We'll make a paper chain and tear a loop off every day.
That's great. 913-408-7710. Since we haven't heard from a lot of you in Jackson County in the last couple of weeks, really, on how this process has gone, I want to make sure that we're on the ball here at KCMO. We will be. I promise you we are not going to give up on this story. And there's something else happening. There's this movement in parts of Jackson County to form a new county. I've been hearing about this lately. I'll tell you what I know about that coming up. Bottom of the hour, the jobs report comes out. So we'll see what that looks like. It's 15 minutes away, and we'll react to it live. Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio. Jobs report just dropping here in the last 2 minutes. Here's what we got. We're looking at this in real time. Payroll's up 187,000. So 187,000 additional jobs versus the 200,000 expected. So that number comes in under what the expectations were. The unemployment rate drops to 3.5%. The expectations were 3.6%. Wages, month over month, up 0.4%. Expectations were 0.3%. Wages year over year, up 4.4%. The expectations were for 4.2%. Let's see, what else do we have here? Reading this from Bloomberg. Not a lot here. I mean, it's kind of what the expectations were, maybe a little under. Now, I'm sure we'll get some dog and pony show on how incredible these numbers are, but I'm not seeing a lot of market reaction to this because it looks like everything came in at about expectations. So, but clearly, the jobs market is cooling off. And that's more or less what has been expected here. There was a huge number back in, what was that? January, we added almost 500,000 jobs. That was a monster number. And then we were kind of between the 150 and 250-ish range. We had a pretty big bump back in May, 300,000 jobs added back in May. But now the number is 187. The expectations were about 200,000. I mean, you know, it's not a bad report. It's not a great report, but it's not a bad report. I think ultimately my takeaway here is that Main Street is still hurting more than Wall Street is giving it credit for. Wall Street, if you look at the first, 6-7 months of the market, it's been bonkers. You're up, 10, 15% in some cases, and big tech has done outstanding. You look at some of the big tech stocks, Meta, Amazon, Netflix, they have had monster starts to the year. AI has been a big driver of that. And also, they were probably oversold in 2022 because we bottomed out middle to late last year. But Main Street's feeling a totally different pinch here. Main Street is still feeling the pinch of horrible monetary policy. That's resulted in, obviously record high inflation last year, but that inflation is still permeating. We're still sitting at, 4% inflation, which is double what they want the inflation number to be. So I don't think there's a big difference here in terms of what we're seeing and what we're experiencing and what it's going to mean going forward for the rest of the 2024 election cycle.
Yeah, I guess Wall Street hadn't been to the Arby's at 150 and 291 where the lobby's not open still. You just go through the drive-thru.
Just go right on through.
They got enough people to do that.
They don't have, that's still a problem. It's still a problem. That's why when you see the reports about the unemployment rate being super low, yes, it's good to have 3.5% unemployment, but remember, if people are not looking for a job for a certain amount of time, I think it's like 6 months, they don't get counted against the unemployment number. If they're just checked out and they're living off the government dole, they don't count against the unemployment number. The unemployment number is just people actively seeking work. And if you have enough people who are no longer needing to seek work, whether it's because they don't have to or they're on some government programs or whatever it might be, they don't count. They don't count. And don't forget that, this week you had a downgrade. You had a downgrade in the U.S. credit score, which is unprecedented. The U.S. credit rating downgraded by Fitch this week, and that is not a good sign at all. Fitch cut its U.S. credit rating to AA+, AA+ from what had been the AAA rating, which is obviously perfect. Why is this happening? Fitch cited, this is the words of Fitch that downgraded the U.S. credit rating. Quote, the expected fiscal deterioration over the next 3 years, a high and growing general government debt burden, and the erosion of governance relative to AA and AAA rated peers over the last 2 decades that has manifested in repeated debt limit standoffs and last-minute resolutions. Essentially saying, the government's growing too fast, the country's got too much debt, and you guys aren't doing anything about it. Now, of course, some would sit there and say, well, that's why we got to raise taxes on the rich. They got to pay their fair share. Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk cannot get us out of $32 trillion in debt. I hate to break it to you, but that's the truth.
How dare you?
No, it's true. Those guys cannot get us out of $32 trillion in debt. Whatever you say, they can't do it. You will have to soak the middle class at some point. That's where the money's really at. It's always masked and disguised as taxing the rich. But they're not the ones who ultimately can get you out of this kind of a mountain and pile of debt. There's just not enough of them. There's not. And by the way, who's got the best attorneys to get around the tax code? Joe on Main Street or Jeff Bezos? I know who I'm placing my bet on, my odds on. 913-408-7710. Hey, Paul, you're in Kansas City. What's up?
Hey, Pete. Yeah, I just got the jobs report. Also, they revised the June numbers down from 200,000 down to 180. So don't be surprised if this one gets dropped. But this is most of these jobs were service industry jobs. Manufacturing dropped by 2,000. When you don't have your manufacturing, your skilled labor, this is troubling. The debt is with Fitch downgrade does. This jobs report wages up small, but we've got a workforce participation that's flatlined. This is not good. And the money that Biden's put in for the Inflation Reduction Act, that is going to start trickling. That means more spending, more debt. Mm-hmm. And people are living off their credit cards, and that's getting ready to come to a crescendo when those bills become due with the high interest rates. So this jobs report is not all. It's not a rosy picture.
No.
So, yeah.
No. There's nothing rosy about it. I just, Paul, I don't think it's terrible. Like, it's not bad. It's certainly not good. That's why I'm curious to see what kind of spin gets put on it today by the White House.
Sure. But you've also had government jobs every month, 15,000 more government jobs.
Yes.
These are high-paid government. So you got service industry. You lost manufacturing jobs. He keeps talking about how great his manufacturing production is during his administration. That's not a true statement.
Mm-hmm.
We're losing manufacturing. So, yeah, it's just not. Yeah, I'll be interested to see the spin too. But yeah, with this debt, the Fitch downgrade this. We've got some rocky roads ahead of us.
Yep, you're right. Here's the break.
Gas is $3.80 a quick trip. Thank you.
Yep, you're right. It's coming back up. We got to break out those stickers that people were putting on the gas pumps. I did that, right? Joe's got his finger pointed out. I got a few of those. I can break back out. We got some of the numbers now by industry. Paul just referenced healthcare and social assistance, the biggest job creator last month, 87,000 new roles, accounting for nearly half of the total growth in non-farm payrolls. Let's see. Government jobs increased by 15,000 last month. Several industries also reported declines in employment. Manufacturing down, motor vehicles down, non-durable goods, transportation, warehousing, all down. That's where jobs are being lost. Government up, healthcare up. 913-408-7710. And that's where we're at right now with this. And by the way, Mark Falter is going to be here. Our buddy Mark Falter will be here at 8:30, Retirement Income Hour, to look at this jobs report and also talk about what the downgrade by Fitch means for your portfolio, for your investing plan. That's coming up at 8:30 on KCMO Talk Radio, 710 AM and 103.7 FM. Well, no, I'm not recommending anybody take advice when it comes to marriage and relationships from former or current prominent porn stars. I would never do that on a Friday morning.
Bow, chicka, wow, wow.
No. Come on now. You know better. You know me better than that. But this went viral yesterday, and I said, you know what, I'm going to save this for Friday. I can't do it on a Thursday, the day after Trump gets indicted for the 17th time. So I'm going to save this for Friday. But, you know, this audience has a higher percentage of married listeners than most other radio stations, if not every other radio station in town. That's just kind of how our station and format is. So I know that as married individuals, or at least having been married at one time, you'll have an opinion on this. This individual's name is Mia Khalifa. Do not Google image that name at work. Don't do it. Don't do it in general, but I'm just saying definitely don't do it at work. But that's the person's name. This person is no longer actively in the business. She's now actually like a sports betting person or something like that, as I read it here. But she's a social media sensation for obvious reasons. Well, she stunned social media yesterday when she offered her thoughts on marriage, insisting it's not a sanctimonious thing and simply paperwork, while encouraging women to leave their men. And a lot of conservatives are jumping on her and saying, this is the stuff we cannot have. But listen to what she says. What she's saying isn't wrong, but it's her approach that is poorly thought out. Let's take a listen to Mia Khalifa.
Oh, we're comparing stats. Baby girl doesn't know that I am Tom Brady at this game. Married at 18, divorced at 21. Second marriage, married at 25, divorced at 28. Third engagement, engaged at 29, ended it at 30, but I kept the ring. I'm still keeping Tom Brady on his toes. We should not be afraid to leave these men. We are not stuck with these people. Marriage is not a sanctimonious thing. It is paperwork. It's something, it's a commitment you make to someone. But if you feel like you're not getting anything from that commitment and you're trying, you gotta go. You gotta go. You have to go. I know it's difficult to fill out paperwork and to make appointments and to do all of these things, but this is your life. Do you want to be stuck with someone?
Okay, so there's your latest marriage advice from former adult actress Mia Khalifa. And people are like, oh my goodness, how could she say that? What is terrible advice to young women? I actually don't think what she's saying is bad advice. What she's saying is that if you feel like you're not getting what you thought you were going to get from the commitment and you're trying, you've got to go. You got to go. You have to go. She says, I know it's difficult to fill out paperwork, to make appointments, do all these things, but this is your bleeping life. You want to be stuck with someone forever? That's not awful advice if you're in a bad situation. But what she fails to accept is that as someone, as she noted, who was married at 18, divorced at 21, married at 25, divorced at 28, engaged at 29, out of the relationship is 30, is that your decision-making blows.
Serial monogamist, huh?
Well, how you cannot find yourself in a situation where you continue to get married and or engaged without realizing maybe you're part of the problem and your decision-making is awful. There's nothing, I mean, you know, if you're in a situation that, God forbid, is abusive, is certainly not what you thought it was going to be, then while I wouldn't recommend it, and I would obviously make sure that you're doing everything you can to right the ship, if you got to get out for whatever reasons, you got to get out. But then you have to reflect and self-analyze and wonder, why do I keep making this mistake? Why have I been divorced twice and engaged 3 times, as she brags about, by the age of 30. That's where your decision-making and your judgment of character, which, when you talk about career choices also can be questioned, but when your judgment is at the point where you can't realize that this person is not for you without being engaged 3 times and married twice, then you have to admit you're part of the problem in terms of why this keeps happening. Yes, your partners may stink. Yes, they may not be the one for you. But why do you keep assuming, or why do you keep thinking that these individuals are the one for you and get to the point where they're putting rings on your finger, John?
Yeah, I guess that poster went out of vogue that used to say, fool me once, shame on me, right?
Yes.
Fool me twice, or vice versa. Fool me once, shame on me.
Yes, fool me twice, shame on you. No, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice,
That's why we need
shame
the posters.
on me.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
Right? Once, okay, shame on you. I fell for it. But if you keep falling for it,
that's
shame on you.
On you, a.k.a. me. Look in the mirror and wonder why you keep putting yourself in this situation. But I can't sit here and say that her ultimate advice is the worst. Whereas if something is happening that is unhealthy, okay, get out. I understand. Most people will understand. But I also think there's something rich about getting advice from a porn star. That's like getting advice from the Raiders on how to be a winning football franchise.
Yeah, there you go. Context is everything.
Yeah, yes, exactly right. 913-408-7710. Text line is also 913-408-7710. All right. Text line, what do we got? Oh, I was waiting for it, John.
You got it?
I was waiting for it. How many times have your favorites like Trump and Rudy and Newt been married? How many times has Obama been married? What do you want me to tell you? I think Barack Obama's a good father and a good husband.
Trump didn't come on here offering advice on marriages. Right?
That's
We're
true,
only
too.
talking about those who offered their advice.
Trump's got a lot of advice and a lot of things to say. I can't think of anything I've heard him say on how to have a solid marriage. I mean, if we're doing the marriage sweepstakes, yeah, I'll take Obama over Trump. But when it comes to policy that improves my life and the life of most Americans, the marriage doesn't get very far. Barack Obama having a strong marriage doesn't do much for my wallet. Oh, boy. I wondered if that was going to come, John. I didn't think it'd come this early in the conversation, but I knew it was going to happen. Oh, goodness gracious. Bottom of the hour, Mark Falter is going to be here, Retirement Income Hour. Coming up, speaking of Trump, did you hear what he said yesterday after he was in Washington, D.C. for his third indictment? It was pretty classic Trump, and it was actually very funny. Despite all the chaos happening, it was classic. The guy has not missed a beat when it comes to a good sense of humor. We'll play the audio and get to that story coming up next. Pete Mundo, 8:14 on a Friday. Tony's Kansas City is going to be here in studio. Tony Bateo in 1 hour on KCMO. What happening? 8:19. Welcome in on KCMO Talk Radio. So before we get to Mark Falter at the bottom of the hour, Trump yesterday, of course, finds himself in Washington, D.C. He's there for his court hearing since he's, going through another one of these indictments. And you got to hand it to the guy who is getting slugged at every different turn. And while, some of them are more serious than others, this most recent one is a joke. It's right up there with the Alvin Bragg one in New York. The documents case is the one that he's been hit with that actually may cause him some legal trouble. But this recent one is clearly just a political hit job, no matter how you spin it. But anyway, the guy's getting hammered from every turn. And after his trip to D.C. yesterday, he addresses the media on the tarmac as he's getting off the plane. And, he's kept his sense of humor. You got to give him that much.
Well, thank you very much. This is a very sad day for America. And it was also very sad driving through Washington, D.C. and seeing the filth and the decay and all of the broken buildings and walls and the graffiti. This is not the place that I left. It's a very sad thing to see it. When you look at what's happening, this is a persecution of a political opponent. This was never supposed to happen in America. This is the persecution of the person that's leading by very, very substantial numbers in the Republican primary and leading Biden by a lot. So if you can't beat him, you persecute him or you prosecute him. We can't let this happen in America. Thank you very much.
All right. So as Trump's giving comments to the media about a third indictment, and he's in D.C. yesterday for his court appearance, he starts off his commentary to the media talking about what a dump Washington, D.C. is. This is not the place I left.
Yeah, that's funny.
I mean, which, by the way, the president obviously does not oversee the city of Washington, D.C. to determine whether or not it's going to be a dump or not. But, you know, it's unfortunately something that you're seeing in many major American cities. And the fact that his commentary, as the guy is just getting hit with lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit and all these different things, is talk about what the hell all the city he was in is. I'm like, you know, Trump, when you stand him next to Biden and you talk about the mental capacity, it's not close. It's there. I mean, you're not even in the same galaxy with these two guys. Just keeping a sense of humor. Meantime, you know, if you ask Joe how many grandkids he's got, he might tell you 6 because that's what it was a month ago. And now he might tell you 7 because they're admitting that he's got a 7th grandkid. They're actually acknowledging that. But he might also say 3 or 4. Who knows? Meantime, Trump's just like boom, boom, boom. Place is a dump. I'm getting persecuted. This is all political. I'm getting screwed. Vote for me. And he does it in about 45 seconds. Radio PPM friendly as well. You got to love that. That's right.
Such a nice man.
But then yesterday as well, as Trump's going to the courthouse, there were protesters out there. But not the kind of protesters that you would think. Right? Like what kind of protesters would you expect to be outside the courthouse yesterday? Just take a guess. It would be, you know, who would be around the D.C. courthouse yesterday? Would it be anti-Trump, I hate Donald Trump type people? Or would it be people who are like, Trump's getting screwed, MAGA, MAGA, MAGA? Well, you would think it would be the latter, right? Hey, my guy's getting hosed, right? Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
Right.
Well, that wasn't the case. There was a group of people, and that's the nicest thing I can call them, a group of people outside the courthouse holding up signs that said Trump 2024 prison. And there's one person, and I've got the clip here for you, in an inflatable Trump costume. You got the audio? What do you got for me, Mark?
Angry Trump costume.
Angry Trump costume. Yes. All right. I have not heard this. Mark brought this to my attention. I've seen the video. Let's take a listen.
Jail! You gotta be held accountable. I can't go to jail. I'm all fluffy. They'll take advantage of me. You incited an uprising. No. It's illegal. Build me my own jail in New York City somewhere. I don't want to go to jail. No! Okay, stand here for a minute, Trump. No! Stand here for 1 minute. I can't go to jail. Yep, you're at the courthouse. I got dimples. I can't go to jail. Nobody gets jail.
Oh, my goodness.
It's the baby Trump. I just saw at the very end, he's got the diaper on.
Oh. God, we really need to bring back the asylums. That's my takeaway after watching that. What is wrong with people? Like, do you have nothing better to do with your time? If you don't believe that we have too many government programs that allow people to like not have jobs, this is case in point. You got some guy in a Trump inflatable baby diaper costume acting like an insane person on the streets of D.C. outside of a courthouse to protest something that he's happy about, which doesn't even make sense. Make sense of it, John.
It's silly. I don't mind street performers when I'm out hanging around. You know, guys swallow fire and stuff like that. But they don't need to be on TV, right? We don't need to record it and post it.
Well, now everyone's got a TV in in
I
their
guess
pocket.
That's the deal.
That's the problem here.
Now we have to know everybody's an idiot. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I'll put the video up on Twitter, I guess, at Pete Mundo, and if you want to see it there, you can. And
it's not clever. It's not even funny.
No,
I mean, if you're gonna do it,
what is this? Oh my goodness, great! I'm telling you, people have too much time on their hands. Oh gosh! Now, on a serious note, Washington Post has here that Trump plans to use these recent charges, to revisit the 2020 election. That doesn't make any sense. It makes legal sense for him because, remember, he is allowed to believe whatever he wants. The First Amendment allows Donald Trump to say the 2020 election was stolen from me, just like it allowed Hillary Clinton in 2016, and we played those clips a million times over, to say the 2016 election was stolen from her. The First Amendment allows each of those individuals to believe what they want to believe, even if they're both wrong, and they are both wrong. But they're allowed to believe it. And that's why there's no juice and no legs to this latest Trump indictment. But legally speaking, I suppose it makes sense for him to continue to double down on this because it means that, he's allowed to believe what he wants to believe. And he's always believed the election was stolen, and he's allowed to believe that. You're allowed to believe something that is not proven, right? You are allowed to do that. Now, does this make political sense for the GOP going into 24? No, because here's what media will do. They will ask every single Republican. The Kansas City Star will ask Republicans running in the 3rd district, well, what do you think? Trump's top of the ticket. What do you think? 2020. They will use that issue to swing persuadable voters to the Democrats, and it will allow them to avoid talking about mostly the awful economic policies of the last couple of years. That's what it will allow them to do. There is, even if you say, hey, Zuckerberg, the big tech stuff, the way they, crushed the Hunter Biden laptop story, I mean, those are all conversations that are worth having. But are you going to change hearts and minds by doing it? Is that going to be the thing that wins you and gets you over the hump? I don't believe that it is. The thing that's going to get you over the hump, because this is true in most presidential politics, do people feel like they're better off than they were? And the easy answer is no right now. So if you can lean into that in a big way, why not do it?